Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Children and Family Affairs Subcommittee. And thank you for joining us today. And we're going to begin with a prayer by Vice Chairman Jernigan. As we stand, and please remain standing for the pledge.
Bow your heads. Dear Lord, Supreme Architect of all things, we are so glad to be able to come together and practice democracy, that it's we the people that decide the fate of our government, but we do so under your hand. We ask that you bless everyone in the room, their friends and family that can't be here, and we just ask that, Lord, that you guide us in the best way possible. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Representatives Bricken, Farmer, Gant, Garrett, Harris, Jernigan, Powell, Stevens, Chair Lady Littleton.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Members, do we have any personal orders? Seeing none, we'll do a little housekeeping. Number 1 has been rolled to the adoption calendar. And number 4 has been rolled for House Bill 467 has been rolled 2 weeks. And at the end of our bills, we will have a presentation by the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth for their report on State of the Child. So now let's call up first bill, House Bill 318. I'm sorry, that one's been rolled. House Bill number 2, 1120, by Chairman Russell.
Motion. Second.
Properly motion and second. Chairman Russell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. House Bill 1120 came out of the ad hoc committee for juvenile justice this past summer, and what it does is...
Wait, it does have an amendment too, is that right?
It does have an amendment, and I'm showing 004147.
That's right. Properly motion and second. Let's go ahead and get the amendment on. All those in favor of putting Amendment 4147 onto House Bill 1120, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You are recognized as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. House Bill 1120, as amended, requires the department to provide annual training to youth service officers on the best practices for behavioral management and conflict resolution in the context of supervision of juvenile justice youth. Requires the department to make chaplain services available on a regular basis to juveniles who are in the department's custody and housed in a juvenile detention facility approved, certified, and licensed by the department, including youth development centers. Prohibits the department from requiring a juvenile to attend or make use of chaplain services. Requires juveniles 16 years of age or older in the department's custody in a level 3 or 4 facility to be housed, educated, and maintained separately from children less than 16 years of age unless it violates the seclusion laws.
Any questions? Representative Bricken?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And to the sponsor, a couple of just quick questions. Right now, annual training is not conducted to these officers?
So
Representative Russell?
So the level of training is not what it needed to be after we studied the whole juvenile justice program, and we're trying to up the training.
Okay. Seems like.
Representative Bricken?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. The last question is to chaplain services. It doesn't come with a fiscal note, so are the chaplains volunteers?
They could be.
Russell?
Could be, or are they going to be paid?
As far as I know, it's volunteers, and they could be paid, I would suppose, if the state has any money, but we can ask legal to clarify that if we want. But the last I heard that it could be one or the other in committee, but that would be a departmental rule last I remember.
Would you like So we'll go
I
out
mean,
as,
I'm just surprised. I mean, it's fine if it's volunteer. If it's going to be paid chaplains, you know, somewhere, that it should be noted. So,
okay, so we're going to go out of session to hear from legal. You're recognized.
Elizabeth and Sonia, Legal Services. The bill, as amended, doesn't state whether the chaplains would be paid or volunteer. It just states that the department shall make chaplain services available on a regular basis to juveniles who are housed in a youth development center.
Representative Rickon?
yeah, well, so currently, chaplains services are not available. Is that correct today?
From what I understand, they're limited.
Okay.
We're still out of session. Did you
Oh.
want to talk to the legal?
No, I'm fine with legal. Thank you,
Finish
sorry.
that? Mhm. So we are back in session.
So
Did
what
you
I
have more
understand,
questions?
Well, yeah, again, I think we need clarification of that chaplain somewhere along the lines, whether it's not, the next committee this goes to, so.
absolutely, and
Representative Russell?
we can get DCS to probably sign up and come and speak on it. But from what I understand, the chaplain services that are currently in place are limited.
Got
And to expand it would be where you get your voluntary people to come out and provide chaplain services.
Thank you, sponsor. Thank you.
Would you like to hear from DCS about that, or you want to do that later?
I'm fine with later, or get clarification at the, hopefully this will get to the next level, so.
I think I know we interrupted you earlier for your amendment, but we worked hard on this ad hoc committee, and we thought these were very important things to add to our juvenile detentions, and especially the Wilder Center.
Absolutely, they need it, and hopefully this will help DCS do a better job.
Yes,
and
ma'am. Thank you.
As a whole.
Thank you for bringing that. Any other
Thank you.
questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? So all of those in favor of House Bill 1120 as amended, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes have it. You move out to civil full.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have item number 3, House Bill 878 by Representative Fritz. Properly motioned and seconded. You are recognized on House Bill 78. Is this your first bill? I know it is in front of us, but,
And in front of you, Madam Chair,
But not your first
Madam
one?
Chairman, but not the first one I've.
well,
I've
welcome
read.
to Children and Families.
Thank you
Affairs.
so much. Thank you so much. I apologize, Madam Chair Lady and members. My voice is a bit raspy today. As the flowers bloom, the allergies hit me hard. So I bring to you today, good afternoon to all. House
Is
Bill.
your mic on? Did he turn it off? There you go.
It's on. Yes, it's on.
Thank you.
I bring to you House Bill 878. This bill has a not significant fiscal note, and this bill would add language to code that would allow an officiant to refuse to solemnize a marriage for reasons of conscience or other religious beliefs. Why is this legislation needed? For many, marriage is a religious rite or a sacrament, and officiants are held responsible before God for the marriages that they perform. As societal views change about what constitutes a marriage, officiants must be able to refuse to solemnize marriages that are contrary to their beliefs. The government has a responsibility to protect the exercise of religious beliefs. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Those with the authority to perform civil ceremonies would also be permitted to refuse to solemnize marriage for reasons of conscience. An example of such would be predatory marriage. My research on this topic took me to find that many of the predatory marriages have become one of the leading elder abuse crimes in the United States today, where that a younger person would take advantage of the older person by marrying them to get access to their banking accounts. According to the National Center for Elder Abuse, this is a growing kind of financial elder abuse. With people living longer and away from their children, they're lonely and susceptible to someone promising love and to care for them. This bill would allow counseling before performing the ceremony, which many officiants would would require as a part of performing the ceremony. I offer you this bill, and we'll take any questions, Madam Chair.
Are there any questions? Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Yeah, Representative Fritz, I appreciate you bringing this bill. Just curious, I don't know, is there somewhere in the code that forces a person in this situation to conduct a marriage? Because it seems like if we don't have that language in the code forcing us to conduct a ceremony, and this bill would make it, I don't know, may make it sound like we have to in some way, but I don't think you have to. I don't think you're required in any way to conduct a marriage. Are you aware of anywhere in the code that says that we have to conduct a marriage if asked to do so?
I am not. I am not aware of anywhere in the code that requires marriage to be performed, but I do know that as our societal norms change across the country today, that protecting the rights of these officiants, both civil and religious, is an important thing to do.
Chairman Farmer.
And I agree wholeheartedly with that. But I think if we pass this as is, then someone could read this and say, well, the code's silent to this, but the General Assembly thought enough of it to say that a person is not required to solemnize a marriage if the person has an objection to solemnizing the marriage based on the person's conscious and religious beliefs. So it brings some substance into the law to which it's silent to now. So I'm afraid that in potentially doing what your goal is here, we may be actually providing an argument to say that we are saying that we should be doing this, because you're providing a defense to something that's not in the code currently. So, but I think what we could potentially do is if you were to just say a person's not required to solemnize a marriage if the person has an objection to solemnizing the marriage, period, and leave out the remainder of that. I think that'd be consistent with what the code, I think, doesn't say at this point in time. Just thoughts for the committee, and I do appreciate you bringing this bill. I certainly do. But just wanted you to know that's maybe kind of on a slippery slope here.
Thank you.
Representative Fritz.
I would just offer, I think that it's important to keep the bill as written. I appreciate the input, Representative Farmer. I just think that it's an important thing to keep it as written. I appreciate the advice. Thank you.
Vice Chairman Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you. And if I could, Chairman, can I go out of session for legal?
So we're out of session. You're recognized.
Is there anywhere in the code that would require us to solemnize marriage, or require those who are in code to solemnize marriage?
No, the statute that provides for who can solemnize marriages uses the language may solemnize a marriage, so there's no legal duty on any official or private party to solemnize a marriage.
So anyone at any time they were asked to perform a marriage, they could just say no?
Yes, under current law.
And would they be liable for saying no? Could someone sue them, and what grounds would they be able to do that?
I think in order to force someone to conduct a solemnization ceremony, I think there's got to be a legal duty. And currently the code is silent on, it doesn't give anyone a legal duty to marry anyone.
If we were to pass this bill today, would that give them grounds? Similar to what Chairman Farmer was saying.
This is on there.
I think that's an argument that might be made to a court. I can't say that
Okay.
it certainly would or would not.
Thank you.
Representative Powell, you're recognized. Oh, we're going back into session.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Listen to your comments. It just seems like this is a solution looking for a problem, and this has existed now. The law of our state for decades and years, and I heard some of your statements about elder abuse, and I don't think this gets to addressing the problem of elder abuse. I think if you're looking at resolving problems with elder abuse, looking at this marriage issue is not the way to do that. And so I just have problems with the bill, and think that this is overreach, government overreach, and will certainly not be voting for the bill.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you for your comments, sir. I think it's actually just the opposite of overreach. I think it's a protection of the rights that we have, to the rights of conscience that our Constitution guarantees. It's the big reason that I offered this. It is indeed one of the elements of the elder abuse. When you look at some of the research that we have found on this, that young folks are trying to marry older folks to get to their financial accounts. And I think there are other things that we need to do. I would agree with you, sir, on that. But I do think this was one of the elements that helps with.
Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. I do agree with you on the elder abuse piece of it. I do think there's a way for us to address that in language, and just not right now looking at it from the standpoint of just reading this one sentence, it doesn't seem like that's what we're addressing. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to support the bill, but I just wanted to make sure I made that statement. Question on the bill?
Question's been called? No, because you made us, that's right. Any other questions? We do have someone that's asked to speak, so we're going to need to go out of session and hear from them. So can you withdraw? Okay, thank you. So we're going to go out of session and hear from Michael Rady. If you would come up and state who you are, we're out of session. Just state your name and if you're with someone for the record, please. Turn the microphone on.
Hi, my name is Michael Rady. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Now? All right. Hello, my name is Michael Rady. Am I ready to start?
You're ready.
Okay,
yes.
great. Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm here to pose HB 878. My name is Michael Rady, and I am a Davidson County resident and voter. 1 year ago, my partner Andrew took this ring out of a little box and asked me to marry him. I said yes, and we'll be getting married here in Tennessee this fall. We are a gay couple, and because I'm Jewish and Andrew is not, we're also an interfaith couple. Our save the dates have already gone out. HB 878 puts marriage rights on the chopping block for all Tennessee LGBTQ couples, interfaith couples, and interracial couples. I'll say that again. HB 878 jeopardizes the marriage rights of all Tennessee LGBTQ couples, interfaith couples, and interracial couples. This bill's sponsor may want you to believe that all HB 878 would do is allow pastors and ministers to opt out of having to officiate a wedding that they oppose. This is a problem that does not exist in Tennessee. In line with what Representative Powell says, this is a solution in search of a problem. No spiritual leader is compelled under any law to officiate a wedding they disagree with. And as someone planning a gay interfaith wedding here in Tennessee, I'm here to tell you that I can't imagine anyone like me wanting to have their wedding officiated by someone who is against it. So let me explain why this bill is so dangerous. HB 878 doesn't just apply to religious leaders. It also applies to county clerks who certify marriage licenses. HB 878 would be a jumbo-sized green light for any county clerk to deny a marriage license to a couple based on their race, gender, or religion. Is this really the headline this committee wants? Tennessee lawmakers make marriage whites only and straights only in 2023? If this bill becomes law, it will be challenged in federal court for violating the equal protection rights under the U.S. Constitution of people of color, religious minorities, and LGBTQ people. Given that both Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Gorsuch voted on the side of preserving the rights of LGBTQ people in the landmark 2020 Bostock case, it's far-fetched to believe HB 878 would take down judicial precedent on marriage equality. Instead of addressing a problem that actually exists for everyday Tennesseans, HB 878 would fuel hatred against already persecuted groups and cut a blank check to add millions of dollars of legal costs to the state's balance sheets. As someone seeking to marry in Tennessee this year, I urge you to vote no on marriage discrimination. Vote no on HB 878. I'm open to taking questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Rady? Seeing none, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
So we're going to go back into session. Question's been called. Without objection, we'll be voting on House Bill 878 going out to full. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. Your bill passes out to civil full. So next we have number 4, House Bill 467 by Representative Himmer. You are recognized. Now, can you sit down here, please, because they have a presentation.
Certainly. Oh, gosh. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Properly motion and second, you're recognized.
Thank you, members of the committee. Here to present House Bill 467 about a couple of third rails in politics, pets and divorces. But wanted to just actually talk about this bill today, get some committee's feedback, and then based on some requests I've had from members as well as the Bar Association, I want to request to roll this 2 weeks so I could get some more information before properly presenting it to the committee. But in short, this bill was brought to me by a constituent who previously had a divorce where it was unclear about how he could get his joint ownership of a pet, and so he did some research, and based on that, saw some other states that had better clearly defined how joint ownership of a pet should happen, and how the courts could consider the well-being of the animal within divorces. Didn't realize this was such a big issue, but from talking with my local judge who handles a lot of the divorces, from looking into this issue, it seems to be a pretty interesting issue that obviously a lot of people care about. I know everyone treats their pet like their children, so it makes sense to kind of put some parameters around that from a legal perspective. So with that, I'd love to get any information or any requests from the committee members so I could help research that and put this bill in a good position to answer any questions the committee may have on it. Thank you.
Representative Himmer, we rolled the bill earlier. We're just letting you speak to
Got it.
say a few things, but not
Wonderful.
to ask questions right now.
Perfect.
So-
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
House Bill 467 is rolled for 2 weeks. Next, we have number 5, House Bill 337 by Representative Stevens.
Motion?
Second. Properly motion and second, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Last year, the legislature changed the small estate statute, and this bill that I'm presenting today is an effort to make some corrections to that bill. I've worked with the Bar Association, the clerks, and our local probate judge to come up with an amendment, which it rewrites the bill, by the way. It's 4185.
That's what we have. Second. Properly motion is second is the amendment 4185, and it does make the bill.
Yes.
So let's get it on in its proper place. All those in favor of adding amendment 4185 to House Bill 337, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. The ayes have it. So you are recognized on 337 as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The main issue that this addresses is that if someone died with a will and had a small estate, the way that the statute was changed last year, a lot of judges will not let the family use the will. And so this clarifies that the family or the executor of the will can do a small estate with a will, or they can do it without a will if the person died intestate. It clarifies that the people who receive the property are only liable for that property for up to 1 year after they receive it. It clarifies that claims cannot be filed against a small estate. Creditors have other recourse if they would like to pursue funds, and then it also just cleans up a few other minor things in there too. So it looks, we rewrote the whole statute, but there's only a few changes in it. So.
Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Representative Stevens, for bringing this. Just a couple of clarifying questions, because making sure there was some issues with whether or not there could be a will that could be probated, but I want to make sure we are not, under the small estate, if there is a will, it is not being probated.
Representative Stevens.
That is correct. It's a different procedure. It's outlined in here. The will is filed. It's given a file number, but it's not actually admitted for probate.
Good deal. And then
Representative Carey.
one file. And then also, under a small estate, there's no ability for creditors to file any type of claim, et cetera, that will be heard by the judge, or that would trigger full probate to be opened up if a creditor decided to come in and think that that creditor could file a claim under a small probate estate that's opened up. Is that the way the legislation reads to you?
Representative Stevens.
Thank you for that question. The legislation says that no claims can be filed. If a creditor wishes to open for probate 6 months after someone's death, the creditor can go and file a petition to open a regular probate case, and then the small estate issues would be just rolled into that.
Perfect. My question's been answered. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Any other
Representative
questions? Hearing none, are we ready to vote?
I do have,
I'm
Madam Chair,
sorry.
one more thing.
You're recognized.
There might be one more clarifying amendment about the letters that are issued to someone in a small estate. We're still working with the Clerks Association, but I think that can be brought to a full committee next week.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of House Bill 337 moving out to civil full, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Your bill moves out.
Thank you.
So we're going out of session now to hear from the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth and their report on the state of the child. So we are out of session. Okay, so I don't have to do that publicly. This is too much. I'm not gonna have. He can't leave. Okay. So they could leave. Oh, I'm sorry. Y'all go ahead. We were trying to make sure if we had to have a quorum or not, because other members are out, I'm fixing to leave too. We're out presenting bills at other committees.
Yes,
It is
ma'am.
that time of year, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Y'all just say who you are and who you're with and proceed.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, Madam Chair Lady, members of the committee. My name is Richard Kennedy, and I have the great privilege to serve as the Executive Director of the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth. In addition to Kylie, who will introduce herself, we're fortunate to have Craig Hargrove, who serves as the agency's Deputy Executive Director, in the audience as well.
Yes, my name is Kylie Graves, and I serve as TCCY's Policy Specialist and then also the Director of the Second Look Commission.
So thank you all very much for the opportunity to appear before you today. We always jump at the chance to talk about children, youth, young adults, and families in Tennessee and ways that we can all work together to improve outcomes for that population. Many of you know that the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth, we are a small state agency. Small meaning that we have a staff of 30. We have a very lofty mission for the agency, and that's to lead systems improvement for all children, youth, and families through data-driven advocacy, education, and collaboration. The authorizing language that created the Commission on Children and Youth in 1988 states in part, it says, publish annually on or before December 31st a comprehensive report on the status of children and youth in Tennessee, and distribute the report to the governor, to each member of the General Assembly, and to each of the state's depository libraries. So we've been doing this report since 1988, and we are excited to share some of the information and some of the data that we saw in this year's report. As Kylie goes through the report itself, you will see that there are some things to celebrate, and celebration is always good. Also in the report, it will really kind of show us a roadmap or an area of focus that we can continue to work towards to, as I said earlier, improve outcomes for all children, youth, and families in Tennessee. Kylie?
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to go over the State of the Child report, which was released in December, and then additionally the Second Look Commission report. So we'll be covering both of those today. So with the State of the Child report, as Richard mentioned, it is required in code for the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth. And in addition to that, we are the Annie E. Casey Foundation state partner for their Kids Count network. So this report is a part of our partnership with the Casey Foundation. So the purpose of the report is to serve as a snapshot for child well-being across the state, introduction to a broad array of topics relating to children, youth, and families, and then additionally to be a resource for communities, grant funding, and policymakers. And so a lot of the information we'll talk about in just a second is information that's already been published throughout the year. We kind of just try and gather it and distill it into a short document for y'all to look through and kind of as an introduction to different topics. It is still about 48 pages, so it's a lot, but kind of gets you interested in different issues related to children, youth, and families. So as I mentioned, we do not provide any of our direct services, and we don't collect any of our own data. So all of the report is previously published information. All of the information that's shaded blue is government sources, so that might be state sources or federal. And then in the green, we also rely on research studies or NGO partners as well. Relied heavily on the American Community Survey by the Census Bureau, as well as the National Survey on Children's Health. And so in this year's report, we look at demographics. We also look at special topics. So this year we looked at resilient communities, adverse childhood experiences, and family-friendly workplaces. We look at economics, education, health, and child welfare and youth justice. We won't get through all of the different topics today, but we'll do a broad overview. So looking at childhood adversity, these are 2-year averages from the National Survey on Children's Health. Although it's referred to as adverse childhood experiences in this survey, the indicators slightly differ from the commonly known 10 adverse childhood experiences. Main difference is that typically the ACEs survey that a lot of people have come to know is filled out once you're an adult, reflecting back on your experience under 18. National Survey on Children's Health is filled out by the householder in relation to the children in the home. And so because of that, they didn't ask the typical questions about abuse and neglect, and instead substituted for what's commonly called community-based adversity, so things like witnessing violence were included instead. But what we saw was that children in Tennessee report a higher level of adversity than their counterparts across the nation, with 41% of Tennessee children having at least one adverse experience. And we see a huge differential when you look at it through household income as well. So 1 in 3 children below the poverty line had 2 or more adverse experiences, compared to 1 in 12 of children living at 400% FPL or higher. And then when children experience adversity and hardship, building resilience is a key component of mitigating some of those negative impacts. And so looking at, do children live in neighborhoods that contain amenities that allow them to engage and play and all those things that are so important, so things like parks, rec centers, sidewalks, and libraries. And what we found is that the largest group of Tennessee kids, 25%, did not have any of those amenities in their neighborhood. And then the second largest group following closely behind at 22.6 had all 4 of those amenities in their neighborhood. So showing kind of the disparate experience of children based on the neighborhood and their access to resources. Next, we're going to go into poverty measures. I don't want to over-explain things that you already know, but as we've talked through these, we've noticed a lot of people get a bit confused about what is included in the official poverty measure and what is not, particularly coming off of the last year where we had a substantial amount of federal and state COVID relief funds. So with the official poverty measure, that was originally calculated in 1963. They took the minimum cost of a food diet in 1963 and multiplied that by 3, and then since then they haven't changed other than just adjusting for cost of food. And so the official poverty measure is gross before tax cash income. So that would not include any of those federal relief funds, programs like SNAP, WIC, or if you're thinking about the last couple of years, the child tax credit, the stimulus payments. None of those are included in the official poverty measure. The only thing would be the expansion of the unemployment benefits. Those are taxed, and so those would be included. Then we have the supplemental poverty measure. That was created in 2010, reflecting on the idea that The official poverty measure is not the most reliable. It does provide good historic information, but it doesn't capture the full expenses. And so that takes into consideration a more broad definition of family expenses, as well as all of those non-cash benefits, like SNAP and WIC. And so what we saw is nationally and in Tennessee, child poverty declined over the decade. However, Tennessee saw a significant decline in poverty not seen in the rest of the country when you're looking at that 2019 to 2021 timeframe. Overall, child poverty dropped by 8% between 2019 and 2021. And then under 5, which is historically the largest group to live in poverty and those most impacted because of all of the development that's happening at that age, that decreased by 18% between 2019 and 2021. We saw particularly rural counties had significant declines. Bledsoe County had a 28.8% decline, followed by several other counties that were close to a 25% decline in child poverty. And then looking at the supplemental poverty measure, this figure is representative of national numbers. It takes a little bit longer to get state level numbers, but across the nation, the number of children living below the supplemental poverty measure dropped from 1 in 8 in 2019 to 1 in 20 in 2021. So that was a huge decline. Likely the number of children living in poverty under the supplemental measure is going to go back up this next year because all of those benefits that we're seeing on the other side of the screen aren't coming into play anymore. So the number of children under the supplemental poverty measure will go up. But what we saw is the child tax credit nationally lifted 2.9 million children out of poverty. Other programs like SNAP lifted 891,000 children out of poverty. When we look at mental health, youth in Tennessee have similar rates of prevalence of anxiety and depression as their counterparts across the nation. But where we struggle is when those kids are struggling, getting them the help and services that they need to mitigate those negative impacts. And that's reflected in our suicide rates as well, and suicidal ideation. And so what we see is youth with major depressive episodes. 71% did not receive mental health services. That ranks us 47th in the nation. And then with youth with severe major depressive episodes, only 14% received some sort of consistent treatment. So youth across the nation were twice as likely to be receiving treatment, and in the best performing state, 4 times as likely to be receiving treatment elsewhere. And then when we look at maternal mortality, there are kind of 3 categories. There's pregnancy associated, and so that is going to be any death from conception until 12 months post-birth. There is pregnancy related, and so easiest way to explain that is that kind of had that person not been pregnant, the death likely would not have happened. And then there's pregnancy associated, not related. And in that group, that is where the death occurred in that time frame of pregnancy association, but it wasn't as a direct cause of the pregnancy. So what we saw is overall, the number of deaths increased from 63 in 2019 to 98 in 2020. Compared to 2019, the percent of deaths occurring in this time frame that were directly caused as a result of being pregnant increased by 28%, and 90% of those deaths were preventable. The leading cause of pregnancy-related deaths was cardiovascular or coronary conditions, and for pregnancy-associated but not related, acute overdose was the leading cause of death there. And then looking at infant health, 29.3% of Tennessee babies were never breastfed. The national average is running at about 18%. Nationally, that percent is declining, while Tennessee's percent continues to increase. 1 in 7 Tennessee babies were born premature. Our infant mortality rate is 6.9 per 1,000. Nationally, that infant mortality rate is running about 5.6. And then our teen birth rate is 23.3 per 100,000 of females 15 to 19. And then we're going to go here first. So looking at some of our child welfare data, in 2020, 1 in 5 children were entering foster care after a prior episode. 1 in 8 were re-entering care after less than 12 months. Tennessee had the highest rate of foster care instability every year from 2016 until 2020. And then first year DCS case managers had a 97% turnover rate. And so we have received an update from DCS And so they said that Tennessee discovered a data reporting error during 2020 upon review of AFCAR's data, which is all of that data that I just mentioned. Tennessee was over-reporting placement moves. Tennessee was capturing hospitalizations and exits to trial home visit as a placement move. Those are not considered moves under AFCAR's standards. Therefore, the Tennessee's data on placement stability in 2020, 2019, and 2018 was over-reported. Then looking at a one-day snapshot of youth justice placements. So DCS has been doing this for the last several years, typically on April 1st. They will look at how youth are distributed in our youth justice system. And so what we've seen is that there's been a significant decline in the percentage of youth who are in community placements, going from 74% in 2018 down to 38% in 2021, and the 2022 numbers have that community placement at 31%. And so we know how important it is for youth to be close to home and engaged with their families, even if they do have to be restricted. And so looking at building opportunities for youth to be closer to home is always critical. And then also, once youth are either in aftercare or probation, making sure that they're engaged with their community and connected is so critical. And so what we saw from the comptroller's report is that in the most recent audit period, although there was significant improvement, monthly contact was not made with the child's school in 55% of probation cases and 28% of aftercare and supervision. So we know getting that child plugged in after being removed from the community is so critical. And so now we're going to switch over to our Second Look Commission report. So the Second Look Commission is defined in TCA 373801, and the Commission shall review an appropriate sampling of cases involving a second or subsequent instance of severe abuse in order to provide recommendations and findings to the General Assembly regarding whether or not severe abuse cases are handled in a manner that provides adequate protection to the children of the state. And so looking at our unduplicated children over the last 4 years, unduplicated per year, we saw in 2017 we had 588, 555, and then going from there we saw the most recent year, which is the cases that we will be reviewing this coming year, we have 599 cases. Every year we'll look at the abuse deaths that happen. After a decline in 2015, Second Look Commission abuse death cases have risen each year since fiscal year 2020, with 7 last year that's reflected in the annual report, and then 8 that we will be reviewing this year. When we look at combined maltreatment, so both the first instance of abuse and then the second instance of severe abuse, we see that drug-exposed child is the highest percent. 2021 is 35.5%. That's reflected in our annual report. In cases that we'll be reviewing this year, it's 35.6% were drug-exposed child, followed by sexual abuse, lack of supervision, physical abuse, and then drug-exposed infant. Pulling out just that second instance of abuse, the severe abuse, sexual abuse is typically the highest one. In fiscal year 21, 75% of cases were sexual abuse. In the cases to be reviewed this year, that'll be 69% are sexual abuse. A brief overview of some legislation from the Second Look Commission recommendations. There was a legislation passed regarding the cooperation of a landlord or person in control of residential property with investigations of abuse or neglect. Additionally, addition of severe abuse to SIPIT review, requirement for DCS employees to report suspected violations of court order, additionally permissively including mental health representatives and medical providers in SIPIT, and then also some training opportunities as well. Recommendations from this annual report, Second Look Commission recommends expanding the requirement of clear and convincing evidence of a safe home in all adjudicated cases of abuse and neglect. Similar to recommendations in the last 2 reports, members recommend child abuse prevention stakeholders utilize community resources to connect relative caregivers and foster caregivers with adequate support. Several states have policies in place regarding a safety assessment to be reconducted as circumstances in the child's life change. Members recommend amending DCS's current protocol to require rather than permit a safety assessment to be reconducted when circumstances change. Reassessing safety in light of changing circumstances is necessary to ensure that children remain in a safe environment and their needs are sufficiently met. Second Look Commission members recommend DCS and law enforcement do joint investigations for allegations of severe abuse. Each county, or at least each judicial district, should have an ADA dedicated to handling cases involving crimes against children. Additionally, the General Assembly should form a committee to research what additional resources DAs may need to appropriately address crimes against children. We also discussed the importance of training for multidisciplinary partners. Typically in these severe cases, partners are working with 3 different burdens of proof, which can get really challenging as well. Members recommend updating the SIPP statute to require a medical examiner or appropriately credentialed medical provider to participate in SIPP reviews of child death cases. And there are many factors to consider when determining a child's safety. The presence or absence of a positive urinary drug screen should not be the only factor considered. Ensuring a child's safety requires a total assessment of the situation and other contributing factors. And that is everything. Happy to take any questions.
Sorry, I missed most of that.
That's okay.
I think I've set in on several of those anyway, haven't I?
Yes.
But, we're all, it's the time of year where we're all scattered. for
Yes,
bills.
running lots
But
of
anyway,
bills.
Representative Powell, you're recognized.
Thank you, and I appreciate both of y'all's work and clearly support all the work of the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth. If I could, I had a couple questions from a constituent that asked me to address. One was, I know the State of the Child report. There was a slide that referenced some of the comptroller's data regarding the caseload for DCS workers that it no longer appears in that report. Can you explain why?
Yes, sir. So when we did the report and we were putting all of that data together, as Kylie said, there was really not any original research or analysis that we did in that report. And so we were summarizing information that had been out there in other places. And so when we were looking at the placement issue and turnover issue with DCS, what we really thought is we wanted to use that as an opportunity to offer solutions. And so as we were increasingly sought out for media interviews, what we said is that the real story with the placement issue is the need that we have in the state for additional foster parents that are willing to take older youth, larger sibling groups, things like that. So it wasn't an attempt to mislead, it was an attempt to prioritize solutions.
Okay. Sure. So do you anticipate having more of that data available in the future, or how will that be handled moving forward with collecting that data and providing it to the general public?
Sure. So as Kylie said, and as we said, we do the report once a year.
Okay.
So with the updated information that we've received from DCS around the error in reporting, we expect or are optimistic or hopeful we will see improvements in that space by the time we release the next State of the Child report. With the State of the Child, it is online, and so all of the data sources are cited in the report. So if folks or citizens are interested in seeing updated data as that happens, I'm expecting that those data sources, those original sources, would be where that would happen.
And
Great.
And I'll add one thing. I think with this, when we're collecting the data, we don't do a lot of public records requests for data. We want to make it whatever we publish is as easy as accessible for other people to get as well. So we are a little bit subject to once things become public, like the AFCARS data. So we typically do run about a year behind or so with that.
Okay. One other question on a similar topic, but can you tell me if a hospital placement counts toward a foster child's total number of placement changes?
So according to AFCARS data, let me pull it up directly, but hospital placement for treatment for medical care should not. So kind of on the idea that if a child is at a foster home and say gets appendicitis and needs to go to the hospital to receive that treatment and then returns back to that foster home, that would not be considered a placement under AFCARS. So the way they describe it is a child who stays a day or two in a hospital for medical treatment would not be considered. In the case of a border baby whose initial placement is a general hospital for medical treatment and continuing care, the hospital would be a placement setting. Additionally, they talk about, visitation with a sibling, relative, or caregiver shouldn't, hospitalization for medical treatment, like I said, acute psychiatric episodes or diagnosis.
I appreciate your answers. I just want to say again, I really appreciate the work of the commission. Also want to say I really appreciate members of my district who are constituents that provide me information to help me become more familiar with these issues. So thank you for your answers.
Yeah, definitely.
Representative Bricken, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I got maybe one question, maybe two. Are y'all do y'all consider yourselves a watchdog agency over DCS or not?
So I would say that I do not consider the commission a watchdog agency over the Department of Children's Services. I think that throughout the history of the Commission on Children and Youth, this body has asked several different responsibilities. There was a time that the commission was responsible for an effort that was known as CPORT, which stood for the Children's Program Outcome Review Team. And what that team did is that throughout the year, they would go into each of the DCS regions, review a random sample of the children who were in custody at that moment in time, and really do a deep dive in conversations and interviews with the child, the family, the foster family, the placement, the schools, the therapist, any person that had anything to do with that young person. And then throughout that process, to be able to assign some numerical values as to the performance of that particular region, to be able to look longitudinally across time. So that responsibility went away in the Great Recession due to some different budget choices. So with us, what we try to do, and again, with the work that we do, it's across all of the child serving departments. So we consider DCS a partner, try to offer information to be helpful for them, as we do with education, the Department of Health, Department of Mental Health, and Substance Abuse Services, and others.
Let me say on that, you have a staff of 30.
Yes, sir.
Of the majority of that staff, do they spend time investigating or following up on that child abuse, what do you call, survey?
No, I would say my work with the Second Look Commission, we look at abuse cases, and then my work putting together the State of the Child report, we'll look at that. The only person otherwise on our staff that I feel like would overlap with DCS is we have an ombudsman who works between partners and families and Department of Children's Services. But other than that, I don't believe we have anyone on staff working.
Well, I mean, maybe I didn't understand the sampling of child abuse cases that y'all have to.
Yes.
And I'm not sure how large that sample is, but y'all go back and review that case to see if it was handled properly?
Yes. So that is part of the Second Look Commission. So it's a little bit complicated. That is administratively tied to the Commission on Children and Youth, but it's its own separate body. So really just on administratively tied, I put together the meeting minutes, schedule the meetings, pull the cases for sample. But the members who look over those cases are statutorily defined. So it includes the director or designee of TBI, director or designee of the Child Advocacy Centers, DCS, Administrative Office of the Courts, 2 House members, 2 Senate members, law enforcement, a public defender, a district attorney, a physician with severe child abuse experience, and then 2 individuals with experience as advocates for children in the nonprofit sector. So that's the Second Look Commission. They're not part of our 30.
Okay.
And so every year, yes, we will go. We have 599 cases this year. We always review every death case, which is 8 this year, and then we pull a sample to review for the other meetings. And we go back and pull every documentation from DCS, from TFAX, looking through. We'll request police records, court records, all of that.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So the Second Look Commission, is that a full agency or just a group?
Just a group.
Okay. All right.
Yes,
Thanks.
yeah.
Any other questions? I serve on the Second Look, and we learn so much, and we get recommendations, and we've come a long ways.
Yes.
You know, since I've been, I mean, I didn't know what to expect, but it's not a comfortable commission, but I'm very proud to be on it to kind of see what we've done and how the recommendations that we can make sure it doesn't happen again. So
Yeah,
it's a very
absolutely.
important commission. And I believe it's all volunteers. I'm not
Yes.
sure, but,
Yeah. So no one on the commission's paid. There's option for travel
and
reimbursement.
they come from all over the state. So it's a great commission. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank y'all. I really appreciate you being here today, and I do appreciate the work you do.
Thank you so much.
After
Thank you.
being on the commission, I realize how important your work is. So
Yes, thank
y'all.
you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank
So
you
we're going to
all.
go back into session. Before we adjourn, is there any other business? Well, I would like to let everyone know we're going to have the special adoption calendar. Date has been changed to March the 7th. So if you have any bills that deal with adoption, be sure and get them in by, get them on notice for March the 7th. Seeing no further business, without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you.